So, okay, recap, in case you guys forgot. What happened is I went to Japan for 6 weeks with a bunch of people that I hadn't really met before, and it was really fun. And as we were there for 6 weeks, we hosted 4 different teams, 3 teams from the United States, 1 team from England, Sheffield, and we hosted these people and we were evangelizing with them. And so overall, it was probably like about a 90-person movement to target Japan. So it was really fun. And so my job, I was in Kyoto, Japan. And so my job was on the base team for 6 weeks, and we were going out and evangelizing whenever we had a chance. And then when we weren't evangelizing, we would be staying back and we would be discipling people who were interested in the faith, and we'd be having Bible studies and all sorts of worship events and trying to bring people into family and community, into life, because that's what it's all about. And so, yeah, so that's like the general recap of what happened. And so I have a couple of stories I'd like to share. And yeah, so here we go. So at about week 4, we were facing a lot of rejection. We were going out and trying to share the gospel, and a lot of people were like, no, I'm not interested. No, I don't want to be a part of that. And it was just really tough. And so some of my friends were like, I want to go on a Luke 10 trip. So for those of you who don't know, Luke 10 is the chapter of the Bible where Jesus sends out the 72, and he says, don't bring any extra shoes, don't bring any extra clothes, don't bring a money bag, just go and he sends them out in twos, and he says, go to the specific towns that I tell you to. So they go to the specific towns, they don't talk to anyone on the way, and when they get to the town, they're supposed to find a person of peace and stay with that person. So my friends and I were like, hey, let's do this. So we talked to the leadership, we get the okay, and so half of our team split off, and we decided to try a Luke 10 trip for I think it was 32 hours or something. So get a big fat lunch, and then we head off. And so I ended up going out with this really tall, big Bulgarian guy named Josh, and this other guy named Corey. So there's 3 guys, and we're going out, and we're gonna follow the Lord. But we definitely know if we end up in a house that night, that's totally the Lord, because it's just weird to bring in 3 big guys into your house for the night. So we just left the house, and we're praying. We're like, okay, God, where should we go? Where should we go? So all of us got different words, and at first it didn't quite make sense. So Josh, he said, I felt like I saw a park and something with baseball, and then my friend Corey, he's like, I felt like we were supposed to go in the direction of the Kamagawa River. And then I was standing there, and I saw the words Kyoto Station with a check mark next to it. It's like, I think we need to go to Kyoto Station. And that's like a subway station really far away. And we had 0 money, so we couldn't subway there. We had to walk there. So we were praying, and we felt like we should go to the substation. So we walk an hour and 40 minutes past the Kamagawa River. So that was check that one off. And we walked all the way to the train station. On the way there, Corey, he said he felt like there was something with McDonald's, and he said he saw a green hat, and we're like, this is all kind of weird, but I guess the Lord's gonna work it out. And we're walking by this ice cream shop on the way to the substation, and I see the ice cream. My first thought was, oh my gosh, I would love ice cream right now. It's really hot, but I have no money. And I felt like the Lord said to me, you're going to get ice cream today. So I was like, okay, cool. And so it was really interesting, because throughout the trip I was learning that when the Lord speaks to you in prophetic words or something, prophecy is used for edification, it's used for encouragement, and to build others up. So it was really helpful to share what the Lord's been speaking to you, so that other people can be built up as well. So I shared it with my group. I was like, hey, I think we're going to get ice cream today. And they're like, okay. And we're just kind of believing for to find water somewhere, or find a meal. And I'm like, we're going to get ice cream. But anyways, so we're walking to the train station. I know where a water fountain is on the opposite side of this ginormous train station. So we're walking under the thing, and the basement levels, and as we're walking, this guy comes up to us, and he's like, here, this is for you. We're like, okay. And so we take these samples, and we find out it's frozen jelly yogurt stuff. It was almost like ice cream. We're like, hey, that counts. And he gave it to us. He gave it to us 3, and then he just left, and he wasn't giving it to anyone else before. It was just the weirdest thing. And so we're like, okay, wow, that's really cool. We're definitely where we're supposed to be. So we kept walking. We got to the drinking fountain, hung out there a little bit, and we just kept feeling like the Lord was like, rest, just rest, just rest. And that was like a common theme for me throughout like the entire trip. Was just learning to rest in the Lord, rest in my identity in Him, that the fruits of the harvest doesn't come out of my labor, but it comes out of like the Father working within people. And so, yeah, so that was really fun. So we were just resting and talking and hanging out and sharing our stories and loving on each other. And then eventually we're like, okay, we want to go. So we went to a nearby map and we were praying, and there were a couple different parks in the area. So we decided to go to the park, which is another 30, 40 minutes away. And so we walked all the way there. Finally, we get to this park, and we passed multiple McDonald's on the ways, so that one gets checked off. And finally, we end up at the park, and we see a guy with a green hat. We're like, ha, we're right where we're supposed to be. And so we try to talk to the guy with the green hat, but he's running around, and he doesn't want to talk. So we're like, okay, well, at least we know we're here. And so we go over, and we sit under this, like, canopy shade thing. And we're just talking, just resting in the Lord some more. Haven't talked to like a single person this entire time. We're probably like 3-4 hours into this trip. And as we're just resting there, inside I'm like, we need to find food. We need to find a shelter. We should go talk to some people. But I felt like the Lord was just telling me to rest. And so we were resting, and all of a sudden I saw this guy walking kind of by us, and the Lord told me to wave to him. So I waved to him. He waved to me. Josh, who was with us, he knows Japanese. And so immediately out of his mouth, he said, "How are you?" in Japanese. And the guy came over, and he was like, "Hey, where are you guys from?" Which is kind of weird. Japanese people don't typically come up to you after you ask them a question like that. Like they're not necessarily immediately engaged. And so that was really cool. So he came up to us. We ended up talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, I have this passion to to help poor people." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." But so he's like telling us about his passions. And before we headed out that day, our pastor, Pastor John, he was talking about like how you never know who you're going to meet and what sort of impact you're going to make on them. Just like Philip, how he encountered the eunuch, and how like the eunuch gave his life to the Lord and then went back to Africa, and how like Philip may have never seen the fruit of that, but so much fruit did come out of that. And how like we don't have no idea what sort of impact we're going to make on people. And so we ended up talking to him, and his dream is to work in the government, to do like social work, welfare stuff. We're like, okay, like that could be a pretty big job. And so we're just talking to him, loving on him. Josh shares his testimony with him. We shared the gospel with him. He's like, "Oh, that's really interesting." He's kind of open to it, so we got to pray for him. We prayed that God would reveal himself to the guy, and he was about to hop on a train. It was like dark now, and he was about to go off to Rutsumeikon University, which is like way far away. So we weren't really allowed to go that far away. So we let him go, and after all that happened, oh yeah, also we asked him what his hobbies were, and he said his hobbies are baseball. So we're like, oh my gosh, all these words are leading up to this one guy. And the Lord was kind of reminding me that like when I came back, sorry, the story's all over the place. I love the story though. So yes, keep it short. And so anyways, so we ended up sharing the gospel with him, and we ended up heading back home that night because we felt like the Lord gave us peace because all the words the Lord gave us were fulfilled. And so we went back, and it was really interesting because the Lord was reminding me. He was like, "Caleb, if I told you just to go to Kyoto Station, and then I told you just to go back home, that would have been good enough. Like you really didn't have to do anything. Like, but I had more in store for you, and I wanted you to be part of more of my story. And sometimes it's just good enough just to be obedient and not just see the fruit, you know." And so it's such an honor to be able to see some of the fruit as well. And so that was like kind of what I was learning, like just pursue the Lord, pursue who he's highlighting, and just be faithful to what you have. So yeah, so that's my 10 minutes.